know, we're doing some things different, and we have a committee of people who are helping with that yard. And but I do want to talk to you about one thing, and that is that even though we're here, Alan is not up here with us this time. And this year he's kind of backing off and doing some different things, he said. And I think that he's going to, next month, he's going to bring the program on pruning. And I think you'll see him, and he's going to be here. He's still on our committee. However, he's not here tonight, and we're going to all miss him. And I know he spent so much time with backyard. He's been doing this for over 10 years.
65 years.
However, he will be here, and he's going to help us and give us lots of guidance. But I just wanted to tell you about this and give you the opportunity to look on him tonight. And he's going to be here in the audience and with you. And sometimes he might be up here giving a program. So he's going to be here. But we just want to thank you for all the thousands of hours, because I'm sure it has been that, getting speakers and making this event a very wonderful thing. So I appreciate him, and I was to ask you to appreciate him too.
Thank you very much, Deb.
Welcome to the 2023 Backyard Association. We've got a lot of exciting things in the works for this year. We have a big group, a lot of them are in this room, that are brainstorming new ideas. And if you have something you're interested in, just see one of us at any time, and we'll see what we can do to bring that program to you. I'm going to just touch on this really quick too. Deborah mentioned it earlier. You'll see the scrolling information. So we're going to let you get your information like that prior to the program. But there's a lot of really good information up here so when you come in next month, just be looking for the scrolling and you'll see all the upcoming programs. But there again, if you have any questions about anything that's forthcoming, just see any of us here tonight. So tonight we would like to welcome back our speaker, Rose Guerrero. She was here last summer. If you had the opportunity to attend, she did a fantastic program on bats, and it was really, really good. So we were excited to have her back to start off our new year. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rose. She's sitting in the back of the room here. She's a native of New Orleans and Louisiana. She moved to the Atlanta area in 1988 with a freshly minted computer science degree. But her true passion has always been nature and wildlife. Rose's wildlife and education experience includes animal rehabilitation, performing in Zoo Atlanta's free-flighted bird show, and leading many bird walks, garden club master gardener programs, school field trips, canoe trips, and scout programs. She's an outreach speaker and bird walk leader. She's a member of the Georgia Audubon Society, a Master Bird Certificate as of 2012. She's a field trip leader and a naturalist with the Dunwoody Nature Center. She's a canoe guide with the Chattahoochee Nature Center. Certified Boy Scout Merit Badge Counselor, the Georgia Bat Working Group Liaison and Public Speaker with that group, and a Georgia State Certified Mushroom Forager.
Yes.
Pretty much all things nature and wildlife would describe Rose. She's a fantastic speaker, and we really would like to welcome her back tonight.
Thank you. I know, do I need to do something with this?
That
No?
is for
For that? Okay, then no. All
You
right.
still have to use this one.
I will use that one.
And
All right.
she's got a clicker.
We got a clicker. Check, check, check. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. Thank you so much for having me again with this fantastic group. I know it's a long list of things that I do, and I had a friend say, "Is there anything you don't do, Rose?" And I said, "Make money." That's the one thing that I don't do. I have a corporate husband for that, and I do all the fun stuff. Thank you. All right, so we are going to warm up with a little bit of wildlife in winter trivia. And I forgot my little token. What can we pass around? Okay, so I have a 9-volt battery. And the way this works is, it's like hot potato. We're gonna pass the battery. Every time I advance the slide, whoever is holding the battery has to answer the true or false question about Georgia wildlife in winter. So if you hate being put on the spot and don't want to answer the question, you may quickly pass the battery. If you are very confident in your wildlife knowledge, you may bogart the battery and answer the question. No pressure, you can ask the audience. But let's see what we got here. All right, so we're just gonna do a couple of trivia questions, kind of gauge where everybody's knowledge is. But this is all relative to Georgia wildlife in winter. So we're not talking planet Earth. All right, so the battery's going. All right, here's question numero uno. True or false, leaving your bird feeder up can prevent birds from migrating. Is that true or false? She is correct. That is false. You can't undo millions of years of evolution just by leaving your bird feeder up. They will migrate whether your feeders are up or not, but that's a common misconception. All right. Question number 2. Hibernating bears don't even wake up to pee or poop. They go the whole winter without ever peeing or pooping. There's your poop question. Who has the battery? Yes. True or false? That is true. Our hibernating bears go the entire winter, and we're going to drill down into that, without ever peeing or pooping. It's not a Rose program if we don't discuss poop at some point. So there's your poop question. All right, number 3. Some birds migrate to Georgia for the winter. Is that true or false? True. That is true. That is true. We do. One of the wonderful things about Georgia is that we have 4 seasons, right? We have spring, summer, winter, and fall. And if you're into birding like me, it really helps you to appreciate the seasons. All right. Next question. Atlanta beavers survive winters in their lodges. You know, Beaver Lodge? Okay, is that true or false? Atlanta beavers survive the winters in their lodges that they built.
Yes, true.
That is actually not true. Beavers in Georgia do not typically build lodges at all. They actually burrow into the banks because typically our ponds and lakes don't freeze to the point where they need access. So typically, Georgia beavers do not build lodges. All righty. All right, here's our next question. Whoever has a hot potato, it is true or false, all Atlanta bats hibernate. Is that true or false? Yeah, you may not throw the battery. Correct. Yes, not all of our bats hibernate. Some of our bats migrate out of here and go on tropical vacations. Oh, yeah, we'll get into that. All righty. All right, our next question, true or false? Some dragonflies migrate. Is that true? Some of our dragonflies migrate? That is true. Did y'all know that some of our dragonflies actually do migrate out of here? Yep.
Where do they go?
Most of them go to peninsular Florida, get out of the frost. All righty. Okay, so I think this is my last one, okay? Last question. So a chipmunk can freeze solid and come back to life. Is that true or false? That is false. That is false. But some of our Georgia animals can partially freeze solid, and we will get into that. So I think that's, oh, no, okay. All right, here's another one. Some animals' bodies can go below 32 degrees without freezing. Their body temperature will be below 32, but their body will not freeze. Is that true or false? It's true. Yep, that's called supercooling. We'll get into that. All right. There are no butterflies in Atlanta in the winter. Is that true or false? Y'all gardeners, y'all know yeah, you have one warm day in February and a butterfly will go right by you, right? Yep, that does happen. All right, so y'all did really well. I'm impressed, Coweta County. All right, so let's pull up our, let's just go over here and click. All righty. It takes a second. It takes a second. All right. Alrighty, so let's get started with our program here. Alrighty, so we're going to discuss wildlife in Metro Atlanta area and Coweta County in the winter. So if you want to deal with the winters in Georgia, there are 3 basic strategies. You can migrate out of here, go on your tropical vacation. You can hibernate, you can lay low, or you can just tough it out. Yeah, and if y'all can't read the caption, the bear is saying, "For crying out loud, I was hibernating. Don't you guys ever take a pulse?" So when we'll get into, we actually know, is that a girl bear or a boy bear? Because only one of the genders in Georgia hibernates. We'll get into that. So we'll find out what gender that bear is in the coffin. All right, so let's start on migration. Any birders? Oh, I heard it. Yes, what is that? Sandhill cranes. Sandhill cranes are migrating over Georgia. They don't stay here, but they do migrate over Georgia in the spring and the fall, and they make a wonderful trumpeting sound that just warms my little cockles. Let's play it. Hopefully, oh, do we have audio? We don't have audio. Well, they make a wonderful trumpeting sound that if we had audio, y'all would hear it. But anyway, they are migrating over. Occasionally, they'll stop to rest for a night and then just leave the next morning, but they don't linger here. But not all birds in Georgia migrate. We do have what we call residents. Am I holding this close enough? I can't quite hear myself. So of course these are, we have our cardinals we have all year round, bluebirds all year round. This is a barred owl, blue jay, and great blue heron, all examples of resident year-round birds. We also have birds that leave Atlanta for the winter. So these are birds that come up here to breed in the summertime, and then come the fall, they head back to the tropics where they spend most of their time. So these are some good examples. This is a wood thrush up here. Catbird. Catbirds love fruit. So if you have like a mulberry tree in your yard, you'll get catbirds, blueberries. This is a ruby-throated hummingbird, indigo bunting, and scarlet tanager are all examples of birds that come here to breed in the summer and then leave. But then as we said earlier, we have birds that are up in Canada and New England, and they're like, forget all this nasty weather, I'm going to Atlanta. So these are all examples of birds that come to Atlanta for the winter. Hooded merganser, ruby-crowned kinglet. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. And they drill these, what look like lines of bullet holes in your trees. I'm sure being gardeners, y'all have all seen that. What they're doing is making little sap wells. All those little bullet holes are sap wells, and they go back later and they drink the sap that collects in the bottom of each one of those little holes that they drill. In the summer, we only have mallards and wood ducks, but in the winter, we have a lot more variety of ducks. Those are blue-winged teal. Same thing for sparrows. We have a few sparrows that are resident, but we have a lot more sparrows in the winter. And that is a hummingbird. Did y'all know that we actually have winter-only hummingbirds in Atlanta?
I've seen one.
You've seen one?
Never.
Oh, you never? Oh, I know. I leave my hummingbird feeder out every winter, and I've never gotten one. But they do come. That is a rufous hummingbird. And it is a western hummingbird. In the summertime, it is out in Arizona, California, and instead of going to Mexico like it should, it's like Bugs Bunny, it takes the left turn at Albuquerque and comes to the Gulf states. And scientists don't know why hummingbirds do this, and so they are researching this. So if any of you see a hummingbird after November 1st, we ask that you report it. There's a picture of a rufous, I know, a rufous hummingbird in the snow in Alpharetta. Somebody posted that on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I have to have that for my presentation. How cool is that? They are hardy, hardy birds, yeah. Pretty amazing. So if you do report your hummingbird, you report it to gahummer.org. And there's only 4 licensed hummingbird banders in the state of Georgia. And Julia Elliott probably is the most productive. So if you report your hummer, Julia will drive down to your house and put a cage around your hummingbird feeder. And put a teeny, teeny, tiny leg band on your hummingbird. This is a real penny with a hummingbird leg band on it. That is how tiny a hummingbird leg band is. They have to use like jeweler's loops, you know, to see what they're doing. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So yeah, if you see any hummer after November 1st and before March 1st, odds are it's not a ruby-throated, it's going to be probably a rufous or some other type. But as I said, birds are not the only animals that migrate out of here. Some of our bats migrate out of here, specifically silver-haired bats and hoary bats. Hoary means tipped with frost. So you can see his fur looks like, yeah, like he's covered in frost. Hoary bats are our biggest bats. Look at that face. I think that's just the cutest face. I love bats. But look at that range map. I mean, hoary bats have a big migration, and this is an animal that doesn't soar. You know, he has to flap every one of those flaps to get all the way down to South America. Pretty amazing. We also have butterflies that migrate. Not all of our butterflies do. A lot of them just, you know, live a couple of weeks and die. But some of our butterflies are longer lived and they migrate out of here. Of course, the famous one is monarchs. But here in Coweta, a much more common butterfly are the Gulf fritillaries. They're also big and orange. A lot of people think that they're monarchs. They're a lot more common than monarchs, though. And these guys are one of the butterflies that goes down to peninsular Florida. If you're on the Gulf Coast in like September, you can see the Gulf fritillaries just chugging along to head to start going south down Florida. And like I said earlier, same thing with dragonflies. Most of our dragonflies spend their lives underwater, and then they emerge as the flying animal that we all know. Most of them only live a couple of weeks, mate, lay eggs, and die. But green darners, they live longer and they migrate out of here. This is a type of falcon called a kestrel. There's a lot of kestrels down here in Coweta. When I do my Christmas bird count, we always find kestrels. And the kestrels aren't dumb. When they migrate, they follow the dragonflies. And it's like, you know, when you're going on your vacation, you don't stop at Cracker Barrel and have a thing of pancakes. You go through Chick-fil-A and you get your nugs so you can keep going, right? So yeah, the kestrels, they can snag their dragonflies right out of the air and eat them as they migrate. So yeah, pretty good plan. Alrighty, so we've covered migration. So not just birds migrate, our bats and some of our insects, not all, migrate. So let's switch to hibernation. And honestly, I put this program together because working as a naturalist, these were all the questions that I had for me. I had so much fun researching this program. But when you start digging down on hibernation, hibernation is a complicated topic. It's a complicated process, and it's different for every species of animal, it seems. There's a lot of vocabulary. So you'll see a lot of terms thrown around like brumation. Brumation is hibernation when you're talking about cold-blooded animals. Because think about it, hibernating is a warm-blooded animal, and shutting down your metabolism is a much bigger deal than if you're a cold-blooded animal whose metabolism changes day to day. So it's a different process. So that's brumation. Torpor is a temporary sort of hibernation. We'll talk about that. Estivation is when you shut down because it's too darn hot, as opposed to being too cold. I'm sure we all get that. And diapause is when insects kind of shut down. So hardly any animals, this is what the things I wanted to know, but hardly any animals in Georgia truly hibernate. And so yeah, you gotta have a Maxine. Bears sleep all winter, and yet we think we're the smart ones, go figure. So I'm from Louisiana. My first winter here was awful. This is the furthest north I've lived. So hibernators, we do have some hibernators. Of course, when we're talking cold-blooded animals, this is brumation. That's brumating garter snakes. Chipmunks, these are big brown bats. And bears, we'll drill down into bears. So brumating are reptiles. They can get almost down to freezing, but if they get to 32 degrees, they turn into snake sickles. So really, all they're looking out to do is stay above 32 degrees. And so what's the secret to that in Georgia is to get underground. So these are rattlesnakes brumating together. There's not a lot of good hibernacula, is what you call a place where somebody hibernates. So they'll often, you'll find them in numbers. But normally snakes are not social animals. They just don't have a lot of places where they can go to hibernate, to brumate. Some reptiles brumate underwater, alligators and turtles. And once again, turtles, they can shut their metabolism down so low that they can just get enough oxygen absorbing through their skin. Alligators, when it gets really cold, will stick their noses up, and their nostrils will actually freeze above the ice, and the rest of the alligator will be under the water, staying above freezing. They can do that because their noses are mostly just bone. But yeah, can you see there's a turtle under that ice? Dragonfly nymphs are another example of animals that survive the winter by staying underwater. Did y'all know that dragonflies spend the majority of their lifetime underwater? They're underwater animals. So that's how they survive winters, is by being underwater. That's a whole other topic. Y'all can hire me out for that one. It's a good one. And some salamanders also. Bats truly do hibernate. Some of our bats in Georgia do truly hibernate, namely little brown and big brown, tricolor bats. Some do hibernate and all cuddle up together like this, and some do not. Some use caves, but increasingly bats in Georgia are using the culverts underneath our interstates to hibernate in. So that kind of brings me to white nose syndrome. Has everybody heard of white nose syndrome? I'm seeing some yeses and some no's. White nose syndrome, these bats are not supposed to have white noses. That's a fungus growing on their nose. It was a fungus that was introduced in New York in the winter of 2006 and 7. Suddenly, people in New York saw bats out in the winter. They're supposed to be hibernating. And they were starving to death. They were on their last bits of energy. They were looking for something to eat, and then they would pass away. There's no bugs in New York in the winter. And so it took scientists a long time to figure out what exactly was killing them. I mean, all it is this fungus growing on their nose. But actually what it's doing is it's pulling them out of hibernation. It itches, it gets on their wings, and hibernating for an entire winter and not eating anything for months on an animal with a really high metabolism is not easy. And they all have to be, they have to have a certain amount of fat to make it. So every time they wake up to scratch, they're burning those calories, and they just don't make it all the way through to the end of winter. So it made it to Georgia in 2016, and of our cave-dwelling bats, so basically our Georgia mountain bats, little browns, big browns, tricolors, 90% of our cave-dwelling bats in Georgia are dead. 90%. I know, and this doesn't make the news. People don't think bats are fuzzy and cute, and so it doesn't make the news. So if you want to support Georgia bats, we talked about how to garden for bats on our last program, and just support the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. I mean, in the wintertime, these ladies literally drive down the interstates, pull off every time there's a culvert running under the interstate, and they put on waders in the freezing cold and hunch over and walk through all these culverts, all the way from here to the coast. And they probably make $11 an hour. Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, have they figured out anything to counteract it?
Yes, but you can catch an individual bat and apply an antifungal, and you can cure that bat. The problem is that these guys all snuggle together in the winter, and then they're flying animals, and they can spread everywhere, and then they snuggle back up in the winter again. It is prime behavior to spread diseases around. Which is why bats are very good at carrying diseases and not dying from it because of their lifestyle. When COVID came out and people were saying it came from a bat, they still haven't proven that. But the reason you kind of jump to that conclusion is because bats are really good at carrying things and not dying from it because of their lifestyle. They have evolved to be able to do that. But basically, scientists have invented like these fog machines that you roll into a cave and it can fungus the cave, but you might be doing more harm than good. Honestly, we just gotta let our population ride it out. It's like when the Europeans came over to the North America and the Native Americans all succumbed to smallpox. It's the same thing. This fungus came from Europe, just like smallpox coming over with humans. Somebody walked in a cave in Europe. All the bats in Europe have no problem with this fungus. And then walk through a cave somewhere in New York, and our bats are just not equipped to deal with it. They've never had to deal with it before. So yeah, I know.
Any sign of the population rebounding yet with immune individuals?
It's leveling out. It's still spreading across the US though. It's spreading west. We're hoping that it won't go much further south than we are here, because south of here, the bats don't hibernate in caves, they don't snuggle up, they're more individual hibernators. So we're hoping that our more southern populations won't be as affected as the northern populations. Anyway, yeah, if you want more information on that, go to the Department of Natural Resources website and buy a DNR license plate for your car. And then we talked about how dragonflies survive by staying underwater. So that's what a baby dragonfly looks like. And baby dragonflies eat mosquito larvae, and adult dragonflies eat adult mosquitoes. So win-win with dragonflies. All right, bear hibernation. I try to keep things Georgia, but just to throw this out there, female polar bears may hibernate up to 240 days out of the year. That's insane. Lose up to 280 pounds when they hibernate. In Georgia, typically only the female bears do hibernate. They will have their cub while they're denning up, and it's really mind-blowing, because they can't let their body temperature drop because they have a cub, right? So they have to stay warm for that cub's sake. So mama bears go in there, they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't pee, they don't poop, but they keep a body temperature warm enough to nurse and raise a baby bear. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Oh, and no loss of bone strength. So yeah, don't you wish, we need scientists to get on that right away, so like I can sit on my sofa for 3 months and not lose any of my bone density? We need to get on that, right? Yeah, and they have delayed implantation. They breed in the spring, but the embryo doesn't start growing till the fall. All these crazy adaptations, I know. But the male bears typically, they don't have to hibernate, and in Georgia, they typically don't. All right, so let's talk about torpor. That's a good word, torpor. Torpor is kind of like a temporary hibernation, which also is kind of mind-blowing. The only bird that will enter torpor is our hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are extreme animals. They have the highest metabolism of anything warm-blooded. There's some insects with higher metabolism. And sometimes, they arrive here in March, and y'all all know in March we get some blizzards in March, right? So sometimes, they've just finished migrating, they're low on fat, sometimes they're just not gonna make it through till morning, and they will enter torpor. And their body will shut down. Their temperature plummets, their heart rate plummets, their breathing plummets. I actually had a friend call me, and she's like, I have this hummingbird. It was on one of those chilly spring mornings, right? I have this hummingbird, and it's not I don't know, and I was like, oh, you got a hummingbird in torpor, that's so awesome, to put it in a sunny spot, and in 20 minutes, it popped up and flew off. It's amazing. But, and so in a hummingbird, this is relaxed, this is tense. So when they do fall asleep, if they're hanging on to something, they don't fall off. But yeah, if you go and Google it, there's videos of them snoring and stuff. It's really funny. Hummingbirds are awesome animals. So we've gone into hibernation, basically shutting down our metabolism, but some of our animals just go ahead and freeze. Wood frogs are really famous for freezing, like an icicle. Their heart stops, and scientists aren't real sure as to what jump starts that heart going again when they thaws out.
There's an enzyme they secrete when they thaw out.
There you go.
There's a heart.
Our woolly bear caterpillars turn into little caterpillar icicles. They can freeze solid, and thaw out and come back to life. And spring peepers. Oh, I don't have audio. Spring peepers, you ever been walking around in February and you hear frogs? Yeah, spring peepers, up to 65% of their body can freeze solid and then thaw out, and they'll be just fine. That's a teeny tiny frog, but they do the beep, 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 beep. Yeah, they're peepers. My audio doesn't work. And this is the largest animal in Georgia that part of their body can actually freeze solid. Anybody know what that is?
Box turtle.
That's a box turtle, yeah, box turtle. So that's the largest animal in Georgia that can have parts of its body actually freeze solid. So his extremities, arms, legs, they can actually freeze solid and then defrost. They just can't have their brain and their internal organs can't freeze. That'll kill them. So when it's really, really cold here, they need to be able to burrow down into leaf litter. So as gardeners, be sure and always leave some area with leaf litter. A lot of our animals depend on leaf litter. A lot of birds and some of our bats, actually, red bats will hibernate in a tree, but if it gets too cold, they drop down and burrow into your leaf litter. So yeah, leaf litter will help out a lot of wintering animals. Okay, supercooling. We talked about supercooling a little bit. A morning cloak butterfly is an example of an animal that can supercool. They will get to below 32 degrees and not freeze. And how do they do that? Is they replace all the water in their system with sugar. Sugar water freezes in the 20s, which is why you can leave your hummingbird feeder out in the wintertime. Yes?
Isn't that like the similar process of how like maple syrup trees up in Canada form the syrup to keep their cells from freezing and dying? Exactly,
right. That's why, that's why maple syrup is sweet, is so those trees don't freeze, right? Because sugar water freezes at a lower temperature, and some animals will produce what's called glycerol. which we used to use in our cars as antifreeze, but now we use the toxic stuff. But actually in schools, they still use glycerol because putting toxic stuff in a school sprinkler is a bad idea, right? So we still use glycerol as an antifreeze. These are painted turtle hatchlings. They have to overwinter underground. Oh, that picture just makes me cold. But yeah, these pump sugar into their water and they don't freeze. All right, so we talked about migrating, hibernating, shutting down, and on our last topic is toughing it out. Just survive the winter. So yeah, first thing you need is some good shelter. That is literally my owl box out my back deck. We have funny looking owls in Cobb County. Never had an owl in it. But you can see there's snow on the ground behind him. So, you know, here in the burbs, you know, we don't have a lot of dead trees. All of our old growth trees were cut down in the 1800s. We don't have a lot of big, rotting, hollow trees, and a lot of our animals depend on that. And so it is one of the times when you put up a nest box, you're actually kind of correcting an error that humans made. So I always recommend putting up nest boxes for birds. Bluebirds in particular need nest boxes. A lot of times that's the limiting factor. You know, if you want a lot of bluebirds in your yard, put up bluebird boxes. A lot of times that's the limiting factor for wildlife. So yeah, if you do have a dead tree that you can leave up, leave it up. We need evergreens, we need brush piles. So yeah, in this picture, where is the wildlife in this picture? I mean, it's not in this big deciduous tree. No, it's all, I bet there's bare ground under that bush. I have big hollies. They're not native hollies, but the snow piles all up on top of them, and that's where all my birds hide out. Let's see what... Oh, I was going to talk about brush piles. Yeah, whenever I teach Boy Scouts, I tell them, okay, kids, we're going to help the wildlife here, and we're going to build a wattle, W-A-T-T-L-E. And that sounds real official, right? Well, a wattle is a pile of sticks, and boy, do boys love piling up sticks, you know, and of course they get the, you know, the big logs and everything. But it really does help wildlife, really does help wildlife. So it's a lot of fun. Some animals, to tough it out in the winter, they will create a cache, just a little collection of food that they save for later. I had to put a picture of a titmouse up because I throw peanuts out on my deck every day, and those titmice, darn it, they grab a peanut and go, grab a peanut and go, grab a peanut and go, and they're not eating them, they're storing them somewhere. So I never throw out more than a handful because they would just take the whole thing. Yeah, squirrels cache nuts, and they actually they have a very good memory for where they buried stuff. Scientists have done studies, and they have a really good memory of remembering everywhere where they buried a nut, better than a human. Pretty amazing. And then chipmunks, their cache is down in their burrow. Some birds in the winter, to tough it out, have to change their diet. A lot of birds especially will eat insects in the summertime and then have to switch. There's no bugs in Georgia in the February, so they have to switch to berries and seeds. Same thing with deer. They'll change their diet to the point where the bacteria in their gut switches over. There's a saying that a deer can starve with a belly full of corn because in the wintertime they can't digest it. The bacteria in their gut completely switches over between summer and winter. In birds, there are gizzards, the seed crushing part of their anatomy. In the summertime, that's teeny, teeny, tiny in some birds. And then in the winter, it grows back big again. Because in birds, it's all about preserving your low weight. So if you're not using it, it shrinks up in birds. This is a yellow rump warbler. Birders call them butterbutts. And kids all think I'm naughty when I say butterbutt. I'm like, it's okay, it's science, right? It's a butterbutt, and they switch over to wax myrtles. They're the only animals that can digest wax.
Yeah, myrtle warbler.
Yep. change your coat. So yeah, animals have much denser fur in winter, but they also change colors. Our deer here in Georgia are reddish brown in the summer, and they're gray in the winter. Same thing with squirrels. Squirrels switch over to a grayer color in the winter to blend in. So it's not just getting denser, but they'll actually change colors. Trapping air for insulation. I have people all the time, I have my George Costanza puffy jacket. People say, oh, I have the fattest cardinals. I'm like, no, you don't have fat cardinals. You have cardinals that are trapping air under their feathers. So yeah, it's the same idea as the puffy coat. You're trapping a layer of air. In fact, when you get goosebumps and all your hair is standing on end, what your body is trying to do is what that cardinal is doing. It's trying to trap air under your fur, but we don't have fur anymore, so it doesn't work. But that's what your body is trying to do when you get goosebumps and all your hair stands on end. Yeah, your body's trying to do what that cardinal is successfully doing, trap a layer of air. Also notice that cardinal is sitting on his feet. When it's really, really cold and we had that snap and it was like 9 degrees, yeah, watch all the birds and you can't see any feet because they're keeping their feet up under their feathers all the time. You can huddle. So yeah, a lot of birds, we talked about how bats all snuggle together to keep their temperature level. Mammals will huddle. What I find interesting about this picture, these are bluebirds, of course, but can y'all see how all the bluebirds across that end are all brighter blue? Yeah, so all the males are together and all the females are together. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, they're like, hey, we're just staying warm, no hanky-panky. We're just staying warm, guys. Stay over there. I guess? I don't know. Okay, so like I said, these are all the questions that I had. Okay, and I hate the cold, and I see ducks all the time. I'm like, okay, how can that bird walk on that ice and have its feet not freeze? But ducks actually have a very interesting network of blood vessels at the top of their legs. So all that cold blood coming up from the feet, the vessels of the blood going down are all right next to each other. So the blood coming up gets warmed up, and the blood going down gets cooled by the blood that's coming up. So that way they preserve their body heat that way. So their legs can get pretty cold. Pretty cool. Okay, change your brain. So we talked about in birds, if you're not using it, it shrinks in birds. So scientists have discovered just a few years ago, I always tell my little kids, I'm like, when y'all grow up and y'all are all scientists, you're not gonna, get your degree from Georgia Tech and have them go, oh, sorry, we already learned everything, we're done, right? Because there's always more to learn in nature. And scientists only figured out a couple of years ago that, okay, so in Georgia, chickadees in the summer eat bugs. And then like we talked about in the winter, they eat seeds and berries. Well, it doesn't take a lot of brains to figure out where bugs are in the summertime in Georgia, right? Look, a bug, right? But in the winter, you have to remember things. You have to remember where that tree is, where that bush is, where that feeder is. And so they actually discovered that chickadee brains shrink in the summertime to preserve weight. So chickadees are dumber in the summer. They're dumber in the summer. When the fall comes around, they gotta get smart again. Their brain actually grows bigger and they get smarter. Yeah, so when I say that in front of kids, they're like, we're not allowed to say that word. And I'm like, well, less intelligent doesn't rhyme with summer, so they are dumber in the summer. Bless their little chickadee hearts. Alrighty, so we're just about to wrap up. So what do you do to support your winter wildlife? We talked about nest boxes, leaving up dead trees, leaving up evergreens. I've talked to people that hate pine trees. I hate pine trees, I don't cut down all my pine trees. You gotta leave a couple of pine trees up for your wildlife. Go ahead and have a brush pile if you have some place for it. Putting up bird feeders, you don't want to feed your mammals, that can cause issues, but science has shown that feeding birds doesn't do any kind of damage ecologically. You can buy bird bath heaters, that'll keep your bird bath from freezing solid when we have these really terrible cold snaps. Or I flip the bowl over when it's really, really cold and then turn it back up. Planting berry bushes and leaving leaf litter. Leaving up dormant plants. A lot of our insects actually spend the winter in the tubes formed by, like, you know, when your daisies are all dormant and the stems are all hollow, there's actually a lot of insects that use those hollow stems. So if you can leave up dormant plants, that'll promote insects. Yes?
What's the matter with the Nandina berry bushes?
Now the berries on our Nandina bushes do contain a bit of cyanide, and they will kill birds. They will kill birds. Fortunately, none of our birds have a big taste for Nandinas. They will typically only eat Nandinas if there's nothing else. But it will kill cedar waxwings, and it has. I have birder friends that just walk around with shears and cut off the berries when we're out, because, you know, they volunteer now. We get them all in the woods where they don't belong. And that is all that I have for you today, so thank you so much. Any last minute questions? Anybody have any questions? Yes?
So what kind of beavers do we have here? Because we have a beaver lodge that's probably 10 feet tall. Where'd our beavers come from?
Oh, well, typically our beavers do not build lodges. But some do. I have found, the one beaver lodge I have found as a naturalist was actually down here in Coweta. So, I don't know, maybe you Coweta beavers build lodges, I don't know, but typically they burrow into banks. Like, you know, when you're walking along the Chattahoochee River and suddenly there's this hole, a lot of times that's a collapsed beaver burrow. Yes?
We've been watching the birds here for over 20 years, and just this winter, we've seen a flight of what appear to be pine warblers. Mm-hmm. Are they migrating in? Have these just been living here and I hadn't noticed them? What?
Pine warblers are resident, but you do tend to notice them a lot more in the winter. Pine warblers, y'all are about like yay, smaller than a sparrow. The males will be real bright yellow in the front, and the females are kind of dull. And they do love pines. They love big pines. So one of the few birds that's named well. Magnolia warblers don't like magnolias, but pine warblers do love pines. It might just be that, you know, you had a pair that had a really good bumper year of babies, and now you have a family. Like the pine warblers and bluebirds as well, they have multiple broods every summer. And the first brood is unlucky because when they're getting ready for brood number 2, they get booted out of the territory. Brood number 2, booted out. And then our last brood of the season, they're the lucky ones. They don't get booted out. They get to spend the whole winter with mom and dad. So you might have just a big family of them. And so when spring comes, they're going to boot those babies out and you're going to be back down to just 2 pine warblers in your yard.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Will the bats use a bat box if you put it up, and do you have to clean it?
Ooh, well, for those that attended the bat program, I will tell you like it is. It is really unusual to get bats in your bat box. You know, our bats are little, and they like crevices. They like to be snuggled. They like to cram into little tiny spaces. Some of ours are adapted for tree bark. They look like tree bark. So there's just so many little natural crevices. The odds of a bat finding your bat box enticing are kind of low. That being said, support your bats. I love bats. Put up their bat box. You never know. And if you do get bats in your bat box, you will know it because they poop a lot. They eat a lot of insects and they poop a lot. So you'll see poop under your bat box. No, you don't have to clean it.
Okay. My second question, bird houses, like bluebird houses or bird houses. I heard that, well, last summer we had like some bees get in there. Mm-hmm. Like in the top inside, when you clean it out, getting ready for the new season, to put rub soap up at the top, does that work to keep the bees from building a nest in there?
I have heard that too, that if you have a problem with wasps building a nest inside your bluebird box, I've heard that too. If you rub the top with soap, they can't attach their their wasp nest to the top of your,
But it won't hurt the birds.
and it won't hurt the birds. Yeah, I get asked a lot, do I have to clean out my bluebird boxes? Okay, well, the short answer is no, you don't, because nobody goes around in the wild and cleans out the dead trees, right? So no, you don't have to. Why would you do it? Is you can imagine by the end of like August, and these birds have raised 3-4 rounds of baby bluebirds, it's poopy and flies and mites, and if you clean all that out and force them to build fresh, you reduce parasites. So that is why you would do it, but no, it is not mandatory. Yes?
I have a pair of buzzards. I have an old home on my property, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they're nesting in there or, and the reason we haven't torn the house down is because of the buzzards.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, vultures love old buildings. They do typically nest on the ground.
They nest on the ground?
But they might, yeah, if there's some kind of eave in there. Typically, they do nest on the ground. A lot of our raptors do nest very early. Eagles are already nesting. Great horned owls, they all start nesting in the dead of winter. Vultures are probably more towards spring, though.
I have one editorial comment here.
Okay.
You talk about trees, you know they're fixing to cut this big property of oaks right across the road. They're going to clear cut. The Banks Lake property is going to be gone. And they're cutting every tree on that property at some point in time. They put 800 houses.
Oh, I know. I do a Christmas bird survey in Coweta every Christmas, and yeah, we do like to bird the PVC farms where they've cut everything down and it's kind of grown up scrubby. There's certain birds that we go for, and every year those are houses, and we find a new PVC farm, and then next year those are houses. Y'all are really, really increasing in population down here. I'm up in East Cobb. We can't shoehorn anybody else in East Cobb. All righty, well, if there are any further questions, come on up and just ask me here. And thanks so much again for having me. Love your group. Thank you. Sure thing. All right,
Hey,
Coweta, selfie, crowd selfie. Look like gardeners. Oh, look at all you handsome people. Thank you.
Thank you again, Rose, for that fantastic program. And Rose has several other programs, and I'm thinking we're just going to keep having her back and we get all of them.
Woohoo!
And then maybe start over. There's something that I failed to tell you, Rose.
Yes.
We have a nature trail on this property.
Oh,
Have you ever been there?
I have not.
Get you there, and we'll talk about that in the future. And I saw where you have like the guided bird walk and bugs, and beautiful bugs.
Yeah.
We can talk to our nature trail people, maybe get you back later when that would be.
I would love to lead a bird walk down here. Yeah, love to do that.
All right, we're going to move on